Hello, my name is Ben Wolkoff, and welcome to another daily anti-fascist video of inspired defiance. Today, I am inspired by the fact that we are going to be sending $40 billion to the country of Argentina in order to bail them out while we cannot fund our own government. $40 billion is an enormous price tag. It is an effort to prop up a government that is deeply allied with President Trump. And what will they do with that money? Well, if history has taught us anything, it is likely that they will continue to default on all of their obligations, and that money will simply be pissed away. The basic needs of everyday Americans are not being met. It may be cliche, but it is true that the prices of groceries, of energy, of transportation are all going up. And the safety nets that many of us have come to rely upon, like subsidies for our health care from the public marketplace, are being taken away. And it feels like a move that only an oligarch would make. Someone who has riches and who believes that the riches of others are owed to them. I want to be very clear. I am not against foreign aid. Foreign aid in many forms actually brings huge dividends for the United States. The health and well-being of democracies around the world are hugely impacted by us giving money to other countries so that it can be used locally for bolstering the infrastructure or for continuing democratic elections. But that is not what is happening in Argentina. This $40 billion is not about foreign aid. It is about aiding an ally, and it is about bolstering investments from other rich Americans. Elon Musk has a huge number of investments inside of Argentina, as do many other members of Trump's inner circle. And it is just so clear that we are propping up the Argentinian government to protect these investments rather than to protect American citizens. If we can't fund WIC, if we can't fund healthcare subsidies, we should not be giving this money to a government that is likely to default on it. I am also inspired today by the fact that John Bolton has now been indicted by the Department of Justice. He has pled not guilty to the 18 counts of sharing or retaining national defense information. Much like the indicting of James Comey, this is another effort to weaponize the Department of Justice. John Bolton and I do not share a lot of ideological overlap. He was, and I think still is, a pretty conservative Republican. And up until a couple of years ago, he was on Trump's good side. In fact, he was hired by Donald Trump. And while I think likely both James Comey and John Bolton will come out of this looking just fine, using our justice system to ruin people's lives, to ruin people's names, is a terrible turn for us as a nation. And the part that I'm actually most worried about is what happens when there is a Democratic president and there is a Democratic Congress. Will people see the very real charges that will be brought against members of this administration who are breaking laws as simply a tit for tat? Will they see it as an extension of this retribution culture, of this revenge that every administration must take part in? Or can we find our way back to using the Department of Justice only to go after folks who actually have committed crimes? In 2025, it seems like a novel concept that we would only go after criminals and to not have that be a political ploy or an effort to muddy the waters about who is actually guilty or not. I am worried when the justice system is being politicized. I know that our justice system makes mistakes, and I know that it isn't perfect. But in order to move forward as a nation, we have to be able to trust that when someone is convicted of a crime, they are actually guilty of that crime, and that it isn't just a political maneuver. And lastly, I'm inspired by the 2 survivors of the military strike in the Caribbean yesterday. This military strike, which is a part of the series of extrajudicial killings going on off the coast of Venezuela, now adds another wrinkle. Previously, there were not survivors. There were not people fished out of the water after the strike happened. But this time there are two survivors, and that means a couple of things. One is, what sort of designation do they have as a enemy combatant, as someone who is a drug dealer or part of a drug cartel? It is an open question as to how they will be designated by the US military and the US court system writ large. Additionally, it presents the wrinkle of, these are people with voices that can speak for themselves. And if we are very lucky, we will get to hear the stories directly from them of who they are, what they were actually doing, and whether or not they were, as the administration claims, part of this drug cartel apparatus. And my hope is that this will lead us all to asking very important questions like, what are we doing off the coast of Venezuela? Are we engaged in a war against the drug cartels? Or are we simply creating a narrative so that we can justify killing these people? And this also connects to something we were talking about yesterday, which is that we no longer have reporters and folks who are reporting on the goings-on of these military actions. So our ability to gain this insight, to talk to these individuals, to hear it from their mouths, is incredibly limited. And while these folks are not US citizens, I do believe that they deserve their day in court. And I think centering them in this story is going to be really valuable for us as a nation to understand, what is it that we are doing abroad? Why is it that we are looking for these fights? And while ultimately I don't think it's going to have an enormous impact on the geopolitical reality of the world, those stories matter. Listening to those who are most directly impacted by our country's actions matters. And I desperately want all of those stories to be told.